fucking headphones.
Ready and excited.
Fucking walking. Good shit.
Introducing your champion.
I work hard for the money.
I'm the jump master, which should go without saying.
You are nothing more than a name on a list waiting to be crossed.
I love this part! Ha ha! I did it! Go time!
First blood.
I'm down!
I like my teammate. I'll just shoot my teammate's fucking head off real quick. Can you ping where they're at?
I got you, friend. Enemy down.
That's two rounds. I have 2 shots on my gun. Come on, help me.
I've taken fire.
Help me.
I have been down.
God, fucking crazy, dude.
Come on, compadre, get up. Come on, come on, come on.
Kill leader appointed.
New kill leader. Show off.
I'm coming for you, mate.
Ooh, that's got a kick.
I'm down.
Didn't even get a gun.
Un momento. Rings far, and I've only got a minute. Rings far, and I've only got 45 seconds.
Champion eliminated.
Charging up my shields. Taking fire!
You fucking.
Charging shields. Come on, come on.
Fuck you, dude.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Oh, there you are. Oh, listen, I've got a wee proposition for you, darling. Perhaps we ought to meet at the firing range.
Keep saying that. I have no idea why. I don't want to go to the firing range. Find out. I care less about these fucking side events.
Scooting and looting, amigo.
They always get real quiet, like they can hear me.
Follow me if you want to win. Introducing your champion.
Go here, now.
Here goes nothing. Let's get out of there. There's a geyser over there. Let's use it.
What is this guy doing there?
It's go time.
Attention. First blood.
First blood. Got an extended energy mag here. Level 3.
Beginning ring countdown.
Yeah, I could use that.
Let's go this way. Maybe some loot over there. I'm checking it out.
Barrel stabilizer here. Level 4. Let's go. Devotion here. Must go faster. Thank you.
No problem. I'll start energy ammo here.
Dibs.
R301 here. I need an extended heavy mag.
It's go time!
Let's go this way.
Shotgun bolt here. Level 3.
The champion has been eliminated.
The champion
Save that
fell.
for me. What? Go faster!
Hopefully there's good loot over here. On my way.
Heading the same way.
Hit the objective, please.
Energy ammo here.
I want that. Give it to me.
Ready, set, go!
Energy ammo here.
I'm not thanking you.
Attention.
Kill here.
Warning.
Watch for them.
Ring closing.
Might be something good this way. Feels good when a plan actually works. Nice job.
Yo, I think other squads have already been through
Copy
there.
that.
I heard you.
Someone's been there. Supply bin there. I need an extended heavy mag.
I need a standard stock.
Heavy mag. Contact over there. Someone's out there.
Heard that.
Care package out there. I got them. Enemy out there.
Setting a portal. I set the portal. My abilities aren't working.
Throwing jump.
Recharging my shield.
Rápido, rápido!
Welcome to the shadows. Taking fire.
Back at the tunnel.
Just shot it. I'm back at the totem. Reloading.
Reloading!
Making contact with enemy. They spotted me. I'm taking enemy down.
Reloading.
Down that one.
Reloading.
Opening fire. And don't go.
They spotted me. I'm taking shots. That was the last one. Nice work. Need to recharge my shields.
Bad guys, let's do this!
Patching myself up.
Just spotted someone out there.
Heard that. Hostile close.
I'm healing.
Frag out. Getting shot at.
Charging on my shield.
Need to recharge my shields.
Need more kills. Where's over here?
Must go faster!
Go here now.
Taking fire!
Heard that.
Hit the ejector seat. Charging on my shield.
Taking shot at. Reloading.
Turning shot. Someone's got a death wish.
Enemy down.
Skin suits are here.
Next ring is far. Not for me. What?
Grenade. They spotted me. I'm taking shots.
Getting health back. Downed one. Evo shield here. Level 3.
That's the last of that squad. This dimension's looking up.
They're sending a replicator down to us.
Well, I'm your new kill leader. Reloading.
I need energy ammo.
I need shotgun ammo.
Shields are low. Recharging them.
Mira, found shotgun ammo.
I could use that. Thank you.
Recharging shields.
De nada.
Patching myself up. I need heavy ammo. Let's explore this way.
Give me sniper ammo.
Supply bin over there.
Okay.
Faster, faster, faster!
Mandatory ring closed.
Backpack here. Level 2. Don't worry, it won't slow you down. Just spotted someone out there.
Rings closed.
Okay.
45 seconds. Be my shield, skin bag. I'm healing.
Less than 30 seconds.
Rings nearby. Might be something good this way.
Yes.
Mira, someone's out there. They're far.
Okay. Ten seconds. The ring's close. Contact with target.
Hit the ejector. Ring's closing. I like pushing limits. Reloading.
Reloading.
Charging shields.
Attention. Delivery.
I actually got hit.
Oh my god, team.
That was amazing.
He just stood there.
Too bad.
Oh shit.
Skin suits are here. Give me health.
Was awesome.
Level 2. 45 seconds, rings close.
Healing.
There's ammo here. Devotion here. That place has seen activity. Less than 30 seconds. Rings nearby.
Touching base to the ring. Close at least. Warning. Movement in progress.
Rings coming in. Might be something good this way.
Care package coming down.
Enemy over there.
So it's a big victim right here.
They spotted me. I'm taking shots. Recharging my shields.
It's go time.
Need to recharge my shields.
So someone over here.
Enemy over there.
Skins it over here.
Copy that. I need shotgun ammo.
Down one.
Reloading.
And that's all of them. Good job.
Healing.
Reloading. I need shotgun ammo.
I need shotgun ammo.
We should go here.
Still have a minute. Wanna make a massacre?
Ring's not too far. 45 left. Contact. There may be a shooter nearby. Getting shot at.
Another squad is attacking us.
Recharging my shields.
Charging on my shields.
Firing. Airstrike. Reload.
Throwing out.
Contact with hostile. Right here. Making contact with enemy. Making contact with enemy.
That one's down.
In progress.
That ring's closing in and we're not in.
Recharging my shields.
Reloading. Throwing jump back. Fire. Charging shields. Come on, come on.
Patching myself up.
That was the last one. Until the next one.
I need shotgun ammo.
Better shut you up. Down one. Down another. Watch your pay.
Heads up, we've got an airstrike coming in.
Charging up my shields. Un momento.
I need some help over here.
Come on, compadre.
I'm down.
Get up. Come
I
on.
need help.
Come on, come on! Charging on my shields.
Patching myself up.
45 seconds.
I need shields. Charging my shields.
Let's go
Healing
talk
up.
talking.
Eyes are open though.
Let's hunt over here. Next victim, right here. Someone's got a death wish. The totem is summoned me.
Shooting at me!
Back at the totem.
Shouldn't see it soon.
Patching myself up.
Charging on my shields.
Taking fire. Son of a gun.
Patching myself up.
Using a medkit.
Charging on my shields.
Someone's here.
Let's go this way.
They spotted me. I'm taking shots. Opening fire.
Go, faster! Charging shields. Come on.
Reloading. They spotted me. I'm taking shots.
You are the Apex Champions.
Ho, ho. Oh, I do have enough to buy something. Hold up. Nothing on point. Nobody buying it.
Why so slow? Ay, gracias, amigo. I was bored. Ay, gracias, amigo. Today's a good day to cheat death.
Should go cure COVID.
We will defeat all of our enemies.
We'll win this thing together. Semper Fi or die. Introducing your champion.
I'm the Jump Master, which should go without saying. Non terre plus ultra!
I'm going over there.
Round 1. Beginning ring countdown.
First blood. Gotta be someone.
Appointed.
Glad it's not one of us.
Faster, faster, faster! I need help.
Let's explore this way.
No, you son of a bitch. Get out of here. Go on, get.
Go faster!
Ooh, that's tempting.
Extended heavy mag here. Level 3.
G7 Scout here. One minute. The ring isn't far.
Looking. I need energy ammo.
Too spread out. You wanna end up in a body bag?
It's go time!
Room next door. 45.
Attention. The champion has been eliminated.
And your next champion is right here.
Only 30 seconds left on the clock. The ring's close.
Seconds till ring close. Let's go, let's go, let's go. closing. I like pushing limits as much as the next guy, but we gotta go.
Care package being delivered.
Oh, care package, sweet.
I've got an Evo shield here. It's cool. Level 2.
I could use that.
Team, I found the next ring location for us. Check your maps.
It's go time. Evo shield here, level 3.
I need it.
I need a standard stock. I need a hop up. Skull piercer.
Attention. The kill leader has been eliminated.
It's go time! Extend shield battery here. Evo shield here, level 3.
I found a
Flatline
charge
here.
tower here. Ultimately, they're pretty helpful. Standard stock here. Level 3. Thank you.
Anytime,
Round
bro.
2. Beginning ring countdown. Attention. Delivering replicator.
They're dropping a replicator.
Someone else is over there. Let's go over here.
You're out of the ship.
Reloading.
Spotted. Taking fire.
Zipline deployed.
Popping smoke.
Charging shields.
Incoming.
Throwing fire grenade.
Spotted.
Alrighty, guys, we are all. The enemies are shooting at me.
Popping smoke.
Charging shields. Come on, come on.
Care package being delivered.
Incoming care package. I love loot.
Enemy spotted over there. Charging on my shields. Bad dude! Someone else is over there.
Countdown.
Replicator incoming, friends.
Reloading.
Need lead.
Reloading.
Gonna check that way. Grenade contact.
Reloading.
Took out an enemy.
Must go faster.
Reloading. Wow, looks like giving my shields a recharge.
Replacing.
One more minute, amigo. Call me Oscar Mike, because I got you, lady.
Healing. Watch my back. 45 seconds. Ring
Shield
ain't
battery.
far.
Medkit here.
EMP on the way. No one open back. Oh, I'm hit.
Taking damage.
Charging on my shield.
Giving my shields a recharge.
Give me a sec. Recharging shield.
What do you think is over here?
Recharging shields.
Not too far from ring. Got 10.
Progress.
It's on. Ring's moving.
Attention.
Let's go this way.
Delivering care package.
Incoming care package. I love loot.
What do you think is over here? Enemy spotted. Way out there, like little cucarachas.
Receiving damage. Giving my shields a read.
Already on my mark. Firing for effect.
Airstrike en route. I am taking some damage. Giving my shields a recharge. Care package over here. R99 here.
I saw someone, and I don't
Contact.
think they're selling cookies.
Got a feeling tangles in here.
Who's ready to fly on a zip line? I am.
Spotted. Double timing it. Up in the chimney.
Shake a leg. We've only got a minute, and the ring's right there. Hey, we got bad guys over there.
Oscar Mike. I'm spotted.
I saw someone, and I don't think they're selling cookies.
Throwing
See
thermite.
someone out there?
Need to land.
Enemy real close. About time we got ourselves a fight.
My shields are recharged.
Hitting me.
Recharging shields. We just eliminated the whole squad. Exciting.
Just us and them. Come on, amigos.
Deathbot's here.
Nailed that whole squad. Charging up my shields.
Take fire. Spotted. Double timing it.
Give my shields a recharge. Round 5. Beginning ring countdown.
Might be something good this way.
Give it in the chimney.
Ooh, that's gonna kick.
Who's ready to fly on a zip line? I am.
Don't right out. Gonna make it up there.
Heads up. Dropping the...
Heads down. Airstrike danger close.
Explore this way.
Charging up my shields.
Give me a second. Recharging shields.
Might be something good this way.
Got an enemy out there.
I am taking fire, friends.
Put the lead downrange.
Throwing Arc Star. Healing. Charging shields. Come on, come on.
Taking fire.
Charging shields.
Incoming frag. Give my shields a recharge.
Oh, what bad aim. Holy shit.
We have our Apex champion.
Fucking Pathfinder. Just a hid. Whatever.
If the gods will it, we will. Pick me, I'm so bored.
Breathe easy, watch your side, and never quit.
This is your champion.
I don't want to kill you, but you're in my way.
I'm the jump master. Duh.
It's a big up feeling to win.
It all ends the same way, with me observing. It all ends the same way, with me
Quit your
observing.
whinging. Now romp with me. Not today.
I have no regrets. It's not in my DNA.
I love. What do you think is over here?
Copy that.
Want to explore here?
Oh, you son of a bitch, game.
Contact with I style.
Ready, set, go.
I've got some hits on me. Enemy down.
Marking our surroundings.
You're gonna have to move at my speed to make the next move.
Reloading. Enemy taken out. It's a big up feeling to win.
Got an extended energy mag here. Level 2.
New kill leader appointed.
New kill leader? Not for long, pal.
All Father, give me sight.
Got some extra supplies.
Scanning the area.
Hey, we got bad guys over there. Rápido.
Enemy over there.
Bad dudes over there. No bueno.
I'm ready. Let's get the job done.
Fly fighter. The end is decided. Trust it.
I haven't found my limit.
Introducing your champion. Come get some. Move it or die.
Let's land here.
Loud and clear, Emma.
Copy that.
Get ready. Moving out.
I need energy ammo.
Scanning the area.
Got some sniper ammo here. Hostile right here.
Attention. First blood.
First blood.
Round 1. Beginning ring countdown.
Extra supplies over here. We're
To
all
those who
inside
need
of
it,
it.
send energy back here.
I can use that. Thank you. Extended heavy mag here. Level 2. Heavy ammo. Got a hop up here. Select fire. Contact.
Thanks.
Sound me when we win. You hear me? Heavy ammo here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Energy ammo here.
No problemo.
I need sniper ammo.
That was amazing. Creo que te amo, amigo. Too bad you're dead.
Bless me with sight. Someone traveled through here.
Attention. There is a new kill leader.
New kill leader. Show off.
Good. Champion out. Looks like some people up in there.
Scanning the area.
Shake a leg. We've only got a minute. And the ring's right there.
I think someone's seen that.
45 seconds. But we could just walk it.
Got a hop up here. Hammer point.
30 seconds until
Someone
the ring
traveled
closes.
through here.
You like cutting it close, huh? I take
I
that.
heard that.
All Father, give me sight.
Seconds. The ring's just ahead. Got some extra supplies.
Standard stock here. Level 2.
Warning. Ring closing.
Listen up, the ring's moving.
Enemy over there.
mag here. Level 2.
Marking our surroundings.
I could use that.
Being delivered.
Yo, we should def check out that care package.
I need a shotgun bolt.
Thanks.
Faster, faster, faster!
There's a jump tower over there. Enemy over there.
Copy that.
Enemy spotted. Way out there, like little cucarachas.
Let's go this way.
Evo shield here. Level 2.
Be aware of the new kill leader. Marking our surroundings. Hostile over there.
Copy that.
Scanning the area. Target over there. Trust in the All Father.
I took down the whole unit. And that's all of them. Good job, compadres.
Good kill.
Evo shield here. Level 3. Ooh, that's got a kick.
Healing my wounds.
Thanks.
Getting health.
Patching myself up a bit.
Taking a moment to heal.
Just a sec. 1 second.
Using me. Come on, come on, come on.
Just getting my shields a recharge.
Be brave and face the pain. Be humble and victorious. Taking a moment to heal.
Next ring's far. Go time.
Replicator on its way down.
Deploy an aircraft.
See that thing? Still alive.
I need a hopper. Double tap trigger.
Fargo.
Down one.
Marking our surroundings.
Throw an Arcstar.
Reloading.
They're not getting back up from that.
Shots fired at me. There is another squad. They are attacking.
Must go faster.
Reloading.
Reloading.
Throwing Asta! Throwing Asta! Enemy down. Rings near.
I am taking fire. I am down for the last.
Down that one.
Fight the long attack.
Charging up my shields.
Contact with hostile.
Reloading.
Enemy over there. Recharging my shields.
Ready, set, go.
Recharging my shields. Half a minute. Ring is near.
Reloading.
Hostile over there.
Taking a moment to recharge my shields.
10 seconds. The ring just ahead. I'm spotted. Taking fire.
Bless me with
Others have been here.
thermite grenade.
Aki over here.
I'm taking fire. Flag grenade set. Recharging my shields.
Package being delivered.
Oh no! He's gonna get him? Yeah. Oh, he got it. What a good save. There. Oh, yeah.
Break a leg. Mine are made of steel.
Join me, fellow fighter. Fight strong.
Time to put some lead down range. This is your champion.
This might be a good place to land.
Let's go this way.
I hear
Cancel
ya.
that.
Gonna check it out over there. We're inside the next room.
Frag out.
That one's out for the count.
Off the mic. I'm spotted.
Reloading. Down that one. I need help. Reload.
Attention, the champion has been eliminated.
Contact.
They didn't have a shield or nothing.
Maybe next time.
It's crazy. Dude didn't even have a fucking shield. Actually, I knew he didn't. I was the one that fucking killed him. God damn it.
This place is something else. Let's go.
Fly fighter. The end is decided. Pushed it.
These legs weren't made for walking.
Introducing your champion.
Ain't afraid of you. You hear me?
I say we land here. Prepare for battle. Let's check out over there.
It's go time! First fatality.
Heavy ammo here.
Let the game
Round 1. Beginning ring countdown.
We have the benefit. We are inside the ring.
Extended energy mag right here. Level 2. Come again, child fast, friend.
I am Wolf Hunter. Gotta help up here. Double tap trigger.
I could use that.
Attention, there is a new kill leader.
New kill leader. Eyes out for. Calling in a lifeline package.
Scanning the area.
Extended light mag here. Level 2. I need energy ammo.
Optics here.
Gonna help up here. Gonna help up here.
Rápido. Want this?
Light ammo here.
Evo shield here. Level 3. Scratch that.
Attention, there is a new kill leader.
Gotta hop up here. Turbocharger.
Listen up, I'm calling a last man package in.
All Father, give me.
Stock here.
I need it.
Level 2. Syringe here. Optics here. Mid-range. Syringe. Helmet here. Level 3.
Faster, faster, faster! Barrel stabilizer here. Level 2.
Energy ammo here. Extra supplies over here. Medkit here. Shield set here.
I need it.
Energy ammo here.
Compadres, heavy ammo here.
Warning. Ring closing.
We are inside the ring. Good faith.
Energy. Got some sniper ammo here.
Yo, we should def check out that care package.
Loot bunker here. Supplies lie below.
Heavy ammo here. Standard stock here. Level 2.
I need an extended light mag.
Gotta hop up here. Skull piercer. Triple take here.
Charge tower here. We need more strength from its stores.
Jump pad out!
Gotta get your back defense.
I bathe in the blood. Marking our surroundings. Ultimate accelerant here. Let's go this way.
Sí, por favor.
Charge tower there. Its power could be a blessing to us. Scanning the area.
Rápido, rápido! Enemies right here!
Found that. I will defend this area from our enemies. Calling upon nature's strength.
Let's go here!
Marking our surroundings. Target over there.
Round 2. Beginning ring countdown.
I'm down! No bueno!
Supplies. Marking our surroundings.
You need to be popping there.
Taking a moment to recharge my shields. Healing my wounds. Following the path to you.
Lay low. I will assist you. I'm down. No bueno. I'm taking fire. Your time is not over yet. Charging shields. Come on, come on. It's go time.
Father, give me sight. Taking fire. Idle. Grenade. Down, but alive.
Getting him.
You know it's just us. We got to watch each other's back.
Charging on my shields. Charging on my shield.
Attention. Delivering care package.
You hear that? There's a care package coming down.
Charging shields.
Round
Go
beginning
faster!
ring countdown. Reservoir being delivered.
Yo, replicators coming in for a landing. Only 2 other squads left. No problem.
It was not my time.
Wingman here. Shake a leg. Backpack here. Level 3.
I could use
Don't
that.
worry, it won't slow you down.
The ring is close. Half a minute. Ring is near.
Mastiff shotgun here.
Might be something good this way.
I hear ya.
Warning. Movement in progress.
We're already in the ring.
Care package
Guess
being
I'm running
delivered.
circles for fun.
Care package on high. Favor from the gods. Hostile spotted. Target spotted.
Death box here.
Beginning ring countdown.
Copy that. Taking a moment to heal. Taking a moment to heal.
I'm quick, and you're dead.
Taking a moment to heal.
Gotta hop up here. Turbocharger.
Let's explore this way. Less than 1 minute.
Light ammo
The ring
here.
is not far. Seconds remain. Safety is if someone traveled through here. Let's go this way.
Go time.
Target spotted. In contact.
Mira, someone's out there. They're far. We could check out here.
Warning. Ring closing.
Use the map as your guide. The ring is moving.
Taking fire!
Taking fire. I have fallen.
One squad there.
Attention.
Charging shields. Come on.
Beginning ring countdown.
Must go faster. One hit. Taking fire! Charging on my shields. 30 seconds till ring close.
We have our Apex champions.
Both shots were a dud with the fucking crazy. I got one out of what? 4 or 5 that I shot. Embarrassing. Alright.
Their final moments give me life.
I'm ready. Let's get the job done.
I haven't found my limit.
This is your champion.
I'm quick, and I'll finish this.
Oh, it's Paj.
You found me. Good eyes.
Stay out of my way.
What is going on, man? Nice back. Getting a good team.
Yes. Going over there. Follow me and I'll cut you like a fish. Spotted shot. Someone's got a temporary.
Oh no.
That one's done.
Oh god!
Not much of a champion now, were
No!
Need help?
Hostile over there.
Yes.
Fast with that sugar. This way, let's go.
Look out! Grenade! Oh, I'm down.
Hostile right here. Hostile close.
Oh no. Oh no! There's a lot of people on this game. We're kinda at odds from the beginning, honestly.
This is gonna be a good fight.
Join me, fellow fighter. Fight strong.
Break a leg. Mine are made of steel.
This is your champion.
I am the jump master, which should go without saying. I love this part! Holy!
Supply ship over there.
Loud and clear, hermana.
Oh no. Ah! No!
Faster, faster, faster!
Scanning the area. Evo shield here. Level 1.
Round 1. Beginning countdown.
We are inside the ring. Good face. First blood.
Rápido, rápido!
Treasure pack here.
Got some extra supplies. Contact with outside.
New kill leader avoided.
Nuke. Extended heavy mag here. Level 3.
Heard that.
I need a shotgun bolt.
New kill leader avoided.
Shotgun bolt here. Level 1.
New kill leader? Not for long, pal. It's go time!
Flatline here. Thank you.
Helmet here. I'm gonna run. Extended light mag here. Level 2.
Scanning for the next ring. Use your map to guide you.
Backpack here. Level 3. Don't worry, it won't slow you down. Backpack here. Level 2. Anybody need energy ammo?
Bless me with sight.
Charge tower here. Ain't no engine when your power's up.
I am no thunder.
Barrel stabilizer here. Level 3.
Deeps. Here's your birthday present.
Marking our surroundings.
Thank you.
Must go up faster!
Scanning the area.
We're already in the ring.
Got an extended energy mag right here. Level 2.
Let's explore this way. Marking our surroundings. I
Got a
could use
hop up
that.
here. Go, Pizza. Hop
Save
right
that for
over
me.
there. Might be something good this
New
week.
kill leader avoided.
New kill leader. Show off.
Attention. Delivering care package.
Ready, set, go! Care package. Sweet. We've got trouble.
Good eye, Pippa.
I'm down.
Don't be shocked. I know what I'm doing.
I don't know why we fucking decided to do that. I really want to play the new Call of Duty. That shit was fun. I had fun in the multiplayer. When's it coming out? Soon, right? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Fights. I had one fight. Yeah, I get really confused.
God bless your wife. I was just picturing the dumb look on your face. Can you imagine being married to someone who gets confused in arguments? Wait a minute, what was my point? And she stays with you? What a fucking angel you married. How many kids do you have?
2.
to the Bill
Bert.
podcast.
Wait, you do the pod, I'll do the cast. So you just say it again.
Welcome to the Bill
Bert
podcast. Yeah, that has to be the intro. That's gotta be the intro. What's going on? Look at these fucking cigars he brought.
Ooh.
Goddamn.
These are, I'm guessing, 7 inches.
Oh, I would believe that, you size queen. This is like standing behind a bus.
Did you ever measure your dick when you were a kid?
Where?
How far did you push into the bone?
I think I still have the mark.
my line was 7 inches on the cough.
What if we just put it on
Quick stops for this and that into quick stops for cash back. With new Chase Freedom Flex, you'll earn 3% cash back at drugstores. Learn more at chasefreedom.com. Restrictions and limitations apply. Offer subject to change. Cards are issued by JP Morgan Chase Bank N.A. member FDIC.
I didn't even realize how screwed up this was at the time. But looking back, I feel kind of lucky. I haven't really had many encounters like this in my life. I'm a chubby male, so creepers tend to leave me alone. When I was 19, I lived in Kentucky, pretty far away from my northern Michigan hometown. It was this little town called Pikeville, where there was very little crime. I actually kind of missed it and want to go back, but I digress. My family came down to visit me for my birthday that year, and we agreed to meet up at the Hardys in town that morning after they got into town. I got there a lot earlier than them, me being the type to show up 15 minutes early, and them being the types who show up way late. As I was standing outside waiting, this guy walks up to me. If you've ever lived in a place like this, you know everyone is super friendly, so it didn't strike me as odd when he started talking to me. During our conversation, all kinds of alarm bells should have been going off. Like, after he found out that I went to the college, he said he saw me at a party. This is impossible as I never once went to a party. When he found out I'm a gamer nerd, he started about playing D&D all the time. He kept taking sips out of some sort of alcohol bottle. Mind you, it's like 10 a.m. at this point. He kept offering me some. There were a few other things like this. He started talking about how he lost all of his friends because he got into drugs, and I felt a little bad for him. He asked if I wanted to walk around for a bit, and since I knew my family wouldn't be there for a little while, I went. The guy had been talking about how he lost all of his friends due to drugs, and I felt bad for the guy. That, coupled with the fact that I hadn't had any encounters like this, and the lack of crime kind of disarmed that warning part of my brain. We walked and talked for a little while, maybe 10 minutes, before I realized we were in a shady-looking part of town. I had never even realized there were shady parts of this small town, but here we were. We stopped in front of a house that looked long abandoned with this dark, narrow, sketchy alley next to it. He starts talking about how he knows the 2 girls that live here and how they like to party and whatnot. He tells me about how DTF they are and asks if I want to meet them. It was at this point that my common sense finally kicks in. I'm in a terrible part of town with a sketchy guy I don't know who was just talking about doing hard drugs and no one knows I'm here. And now he wants me to go into an obviously abandoned house under the guise of meeting some ladies. I obviously declined his offer and immediately said I needed to get back as my family was probably waiting. He seemed a little upset about this, and then asked if I could help him move a pool table into his van, which was conveniently parked down the alley. I declined this as well. This is when he began to reach into his jacket pocket. Since those bells started going off, I realized just how much this guy looked like he might stab me. This terrified me. At this moment, my stepmom did the only kind of thing she ever did for me. She called to see where I was. I took this as an opportunity to hastily exit. The creep followed me for 3 more blocks. I don't know what exactly this guy wanted, but it was probably just to rob me. Still, that area has a good amount of disappearances and is one of the worst areas in the country for human trafficking, I later found out. I don't know what would have happened had I agreed to help, but I can't help but think of that one scene from Silence of the Lambs, where Bill lures a victim into his van. I hope he got the help he needed and is doing better, but I also hope just as much that I never have the misfortune of running into him again. Tonight I was at work. I cleaned a shopping mall, and a very polite goth teen, green hair, black clothes, approached me asking about a potential job. I gave him information on a job center in town and went on my way. About an hour later, I'm walking back a hallway towards the bathrooms that I have to check every hour. The same kid passes me, ducking down a service corridor. People use those all the time here, so I don't think anything of it, until a very large pack, about 10 to 12, of redneck teens comes back the hall together. One boy walks into and searches our men's room. A girl sticks her head into the corridor and says, "No one's there, but it goes all the way through to another door." They are actively hunting the green-haired boy. I walk past the group, thinking to get out of earshot and radio security to deal with it. Rounding a corner, the direction they had come from, I see that the pack had shut the fire doors, effectively closing off the public hallway from sight. I call security and they arrive at the group of teens, who claim that the goth boy flashed a gun. Cops are called, they find and frisk the goth kid, to find that he has no weapons other than pepper spray. The group of stalkers is sent home for the day and the boy stays for a few more hours. Nothing came of it, but based on the pack's actions, secluding the hallway and organized hunting, I wonder if we wouldn't have been calling it a body if they'd found that goth teen. This takes place around 10 years ago. I was around age 16. My family owns a business located in a little rural town. Not much happens.
Where is he
around
getting
here,
this
and
off
it's
of?
very
I feel
quiet,
like he's
safe
getting it
place.
off of
I
like
still live in the town and I often leave my house
4chan
unlocked
stories
during
or
the day
something.
and leave our keys in our vehicles. The business sat back off the main road pretty far and was pretty secluded and surrounded by trees. Honestly, I always felt a little creeped out being there after dark by myself to begin with. Our office was a modular office trailer, the kind they often rent out to construction sites. When you went into the main door, to the left was a large open room where the office was. Straight ahead was the bathroom, and to the right there was a storage room. One late evening, my mom said she had forgotten something in the office and was going to go get it. I volunteered to go grab it for her. Like I said, the place at night always gave me a weird feeling, so I didn't want her going alone. I drive down to the office and pull into our well-lit parking lot. It was a cool, clear evening with a moderate breeze. I get out my key, unlock the large deadbolt, and open the heavy door. I flipped on the lights and made a sharp left into the main part of the office. I now had my back to the only exit to the storage room. I started looking through her desk for the item she needed. I heard a creaking noise coming from behind me. I instantly froze in fear. My combination of being jumpy and the place already giving me the creeps set my mind into overdrive. I tried to rationalize and set my mind at ease. After all, it was windy out and there were tree limbs that could reach the building on that side. I finally gained the courage to turn around and peer into the room. The light from the office flooded into the room and I could see to the black wall. And as far as I could tell, nothing was there. I chalked it up as the wind, found what I needed and slowly approached the door, my eyes never leaving that doorway to the storage room. Part of me wanted to look what made the noise, but my instinct was screaming to just let it go. I listened to my instinct, walked out of the door backwards with my eyes never breaking contact with the room. I just had such a bad feeling about it. I reached in through the door, flipped out the lights, and locked the deadbolt. Got in my car and went home. I never bothered telling anyone about it that night, figuring it was just my imagination getting the best of me. The next day we found the window for the storage room was broke out. It had actually been robbed. To this day, I truly wonder if whoever was robbing us was hiding in that room and was there. What would have happened if I would have investigated? Worse yet, what would have happened if my mother would have gone there alone? June 14th, 2018. This has sort of been an ongoing thing for about a month, but only really escalated to creepy territory tonight. I was almost hesitant to post this here because I truly care about the villain of the story, but it's recently become too much for me to hold in and keep to myself. I'm a dietary aide at a local assisted living facility. If you're not familiar with those, they're sort of the step before nursing homes. Our residents are lucky enough to live relatively independently, and we only assist them in their daily routine. The one that I work at really feels like the opposite of a nursing home. Rather than being cold and clinical, it's warm and almost feels like a lavish hotel. My job as a dietary aide is to assist in preparing food, serving food to the residents, cleaning the kitchen and dining room, etc. Think of it as like being waited for the same group of people every day. To give you a little background, I'm a 17-year-old girl who just graduated high school and is pursuing an associate's degree in pre-med at a local college before moving away to university. I've been working at this facility for around a year now and I've grown to really know pretty much all of my residents. One of these residents is Mary, who is mostly deaf and who lives there with her 3 sisters. When I first started working there, I didn't really talk much or anything beyond me bringing her drinks and taking her orders. I could hardly understand anything she said anyway. However, I knew that she was lonely due to the communication barrier between her and others, so I attempted to reach out to her a little bit. I would smile, wave at her, ask her how her day was, etc. It wasn't anything I didn't do for my other residents, but it excited her immensely. Mary is a very touchy woman. And by that I mean she likes to touch those she's talking to, pat them, hug them, etc. I'm autistic and usually jump when touched, but for some reason she never made me uncomfortable. I took this as a good sign, and I allowed her to touch me since I knew it was her way of showing affection, since talking wasn't very easy for her. It started as pats on the back and shoulder, then it was hugs, then full-on embraces. Now she's at the point where she feels the need to kiss me over and over. This was the point when I became a bit uncomfortable with the contact, but only because I was afraid of how it might be perceived. I have short hair and an overall butchy and masculine appearance that makes many residents with memory issues believe that I'm a man, and I'm also openly a lesbian. One of my coworkers had to be physically separated from a resident who was romantically pursuing her, and I was afraid that my interactions with Mary would be seen as romantic or overtly sexual. Just to clear things up, I'm not attracted to Mary, and I'm almost certain she's not attracted to me. She just constantly assures me that she loves me and I'm really sweet, but it's flirty or anything. After a few weeks of this, Mary had become persistent. When she's done eating, she stands by the kitchen door as I do dishes and simply watches me, waiting for me to come out and talk to her. In really busy times, she waited almost an hour for me to be free, just standing in the doorway and looking in. As I'm serving food and taking orders, she watches me. The workers and residents usually find it sweet or funny how she reacts, but she literally won't let me go once she has a hold of me. She's actually a really tiny woman, but she's strangely strong. Even if she wasn't, I can't exactly push one of my residents away. So I'm pretty much forced to deal with the hugs, kisses, and assurances of her love until either I or a coworker can get through to her that I have to go back to work. Even then, it doesn't always work out since she's headed down. She usually understands what I'm saying after a while, but whenever a coworker comes to my rescue, Mary becomes strangely hostile towards them, holding me tighter and saying she'd hold me for the rest of her life if she could. Tonight went as usual, with Mary waiting for me and attacking as soon as I stepped out of the kitchen. One of the CNAs told her that I had to get back to work, and Mary gave her literally the dirtiest, meanest look I had ever seen her give, and whispered to me that she would be back later. As a coworker and I were closing the kitchen, Mary showed up again, just like she had promised. My coworker was getting the mop water ready in the back of the kitchen when I stepped out to clean the counter in the dining room, and she latched on to me. "Don't look at obvious now," she said, and I heard it pretty clearly. "She didn't like it," she continued, most likely talking about the CNA that interrupted her. Mary embraced me, kissing me over and over, and told me how much she loved me, and how she would love me for the rest of her life. After about 5 minutes, I was determined to get back to work, but she just hung me tight. Eventually, someone was trying to get the luggage cart to the dining room, so I tried to break it off to let them through. But Mary just dragged me to the other side to let me through without letting me go. It was nearly 10 more minutes until I could convince her to let me go. According to the CNAs, Mary talks about is me. Even though I'm off, Mary knows I'm off. She waits for me, so I might show up somehow. I truly do love and care about Mary, and I often wonder what made her latch onto me. I don't know if I remind her of someone from the past, or if she just happens to really like me, but it's getting to the point where her life revolves around me, and she's willing to fight against anyone who gets in the way of that. It would be really sweet and cute if she just happened to like me, but she can't be away from me. What really scares me is how she retaliates against everyone in order to be with me. My mom's theory is that Mary knows her life is coming to an end, she's at least 85 to 90, and finds some sort of comfort in me. And then I thought about the theory about Mary, how she might think of a man. And it turns out that was the case. One of the administrators at work told me to avoid Mary until I could talk to her about the situation. And as I did dishes tonight, we had the kitchen doors closed so Mary couldn't get to me. She started banging on the door, staring in at me. When the CNA told her that she needed to leave me alone and let me do my work, Mary then said, "I want him." And the CNAs tried to explain to her that I was not only a girl, but also a minor. And this just sent Mary into a frenzy, as she claimed that they were lying. She wanted to be with a man. She started making threats, both legal and physical, and eventually it was decided that corporate would be brought into it, and decided that the best option would be kicking her out, since she technically sexually harassed a minor. I was told this by one of my coworkers who was helping to guard the door. I was stunned, horrified, and a lot of other things I can't really describe. And this whole time, all of the kissing, touching, holding, it was all sexual. All the time she invited me to her room, it wasn't just to hang out with me. It was to do things with me. The woman I had thought of as a sort of grandma-esque figure was romantically obsessed with me. I can't help but feel violated. Even though she wasn't allowed to come near me, she sat by the dining room sobbing, feeling as though her only love was taken from her. It's sort of a difficult situation since I truly do love her, but not the way that she loves me. And now that she's not all there in the head, I wish that I would have known this before reluctantly allowing her to kiss me on the mouth, touch me on the chest and the thigh. I just thought this was her strange way of expressing herself through touch, but it seems it was something too optimistic. So my friends Carol, Xander, Maria, and Vanessa and I all decided to go to a traffic light party that was held in our high school. We all met at Vanessa's to drink beforehand and have fun in case the party was wet. Thereafter, we went to the high school. We arrived right at the start, and none of our other friends were there. We then decided to go into a bathroom where the teachers had laid out chips and soda for students who weren't planning on drinking. We sat and relaxed, and our other friends slowly arrived. For some background information, Carol had a really creepy admirer. He was in Maria's class and was a bit older than us. His name was Jacob. Jacob was known for being a huge pothead and not being afraid to experiment with other substances. He was constantly seen being slow and weird during school time, which I assumed was him being high or something. day Kelly just don't know. It still haunts me. I've always been a strong believer in the paranormal, and never a stranger to it. I've had experiences back to when I was a kid, and I figured I'd share a few of the ones that really got me. Being no stranger to Ouija boards, though many don't believe it, even the ones I've done them with, I've had some crazy experiences with them. The one that stuck out to me most and where it really showed a presence, I was in my living room with my girlfriend at the time, a roommate and some friends. Going through the basic ritual of it, we started talking to a spirit. It said that it was present in the house, and went through asking where it was. Now the way the place was set up, we walked through the front door. We had a shoe rack against the wall directly in front of the door and a staircase going up to the left. This spirit said it was upstairs, and my roommate, who was extremely Christian and had studied demonology and was an ordained minister, started walking up the stairs. He was about 350 pounds, just a very big guy. As he started walking up the stairs, we turned as he yelled and got thrown backwards into the shoe rack that was against the wall. Needless to say, we said our goodbyes and put it away. The next was an old abandoned glass factory by where I lived. Nothing was known to be paranormal about it or it being haunted, but we snuck in and immediately felt some kind of energy. The same roommate after a while said that we had to leave. The spirits weren't good. So I had been recording the entire thing on my phone voice recorder. I lost it over the years. When we got out, we listened to it. Nothing out of the ordinary until we're leaving. The roommate was saying different things on the way out. As I mentioned, he was very Christian, so he was trying to keep away spirits that were trying to harm us, he would say. I remember one specifically on the recording. He had said, "By the power invested in me by Jesus Christ, you will not harm us." Now, I was about 5 feet next to him walking out, and two other friends were maybe 15 to 20 feet in front of us. Immediately after, he said this on the recording, what sounded to be his voice, just a little higher pitched. You hear, "Down with your king." Most people I've showed it to when I had it said that it had been him or the other two joking, but it was audible in the recording enough that they would have had to yell it with how far they were. And if he had whispered it next to me so I wouldn't hear, it wouldn't have been that audible. You could hear it 2 to 3 times throughout the recording, the same message. The last one is to this day one of the craziest experiences I've had. Another kid who lived with us at the time, his parents owned a house that he said was very haunted. He would see his dead grandmother in the house, other spirits who would interact with him, the normal that you would expect from a haunted house. No one lived there anymore, and they were getting ready to sell, so we decided to take a trip there. The other roommate was on the couch saying verses in Latin, trying to make a connection to whatever was in the house. I was standing in the hall recording video off the stairs where most of the activity was said to have been seen, and the other kid and his girlfriend were across from the window at the bottom of the stairs. All of a sudden, she screamed and was pointing at the window. The one on the couch had started to get super antsy and paranoid, saying that there was nothing good there and we had to go immediately. Now, this I have on video and can try to upload to Imgur to show you guys, but all of a sudden on the window, clear as day, handprints had appeared from what would have been the outside as if though someone was trying to get in. Almost when your window was foggy and you put your hands on it. We got out of there right then and there and never went back. Like I said, we're no stranger to the paranormal, and I've had many experiences, but those have always stuck out to me the most. I've always had a fascination with the paranormal. I have had many personal and shared experiences that I just can't explain. I like to consider myself a skeptic as well, using reason and logic to debunk such goings-on. One of the most terrifying events that occurred to me was in the summer of 2008. I was spending the night at my Aunt Lee's apartment. It was around 1 and I was alone in the living room. Now the apartment was very small, having only 1 bedroom and 1 bathroom. They were both right next to each other in the rear of the apartment. I was sitting on the floor in the living room watching the TV with all the lights off. Like I said, the apartment was really tiny. My aunt's bedroom was right behind me and to the right, with a small hallway separating the bedroom and the restroom. I had previously used the restroom and I always shut off the lights. My aunt always had her bedroom door shut. I don't recall what I was watching, but I had the volume down so as not to bother my aunt. The kitchen was on the other side of the wall behind the television. To the right of the kitchen was the dining area, where there was a large and round wooden table there. Again, the apartment was quiet and it was late. As I sat there watching TV, I briefly heard what sounded like a glass or cup slide on the wooden table. The table must have been at least 10 feet from me. As soon as I heard that sound, it drew my attention. I gazed in the direction and lowered the volume of the TV some more. I focused back on the television, and now I heard what sounded like a coin being dropped on the very same table. Again, I gazed in that direction, puzzled as to how a coin would bounce on the wooden dinner table. I turned back and began to watch the TV. Now at this point, I started to feel uneasy. The next thing that happened is something I could still recall as though it happened to me yesterday. It still makes my skin crawl and sends shivers up my spine whenever I think about it. After I heard the coin bounce on the table, I directed my attention to the TV as I turned my head towards the TV. I heard the most menacing growl to my right that made me jump and lean away from it. It was so close to me and loud that I thought there was an actual animal about to attack me or something. I scramble up and flip on the lamp closest to me and immediately walk to see my aunt's door is closed. It was. I look in the bathroom. It was empty. I begin to turn on all the lights. I check to see if the main entrance door was locked. It was. I walk into the kitchen, empty of course. I had the view to the entire apartment from my original vantage point. No one could have snuck up on me and then retreat away in an instant like that. My heart was beating so hard that it felt as though it was about to burst from my chest. I sat on the couch amazed at what transpired, trying to fathom how or what could have made that deep-throated demonic snarl. Thank goodness I have not heard anything like that since then. Non-believers look at me with disdain when I tell them about this incident. I guess I would have been skeptical too, but under these circumstances I just can't explain it. Has anyone else ever had anything like this happen to them? I'll be posting more of my other encounters with the unexplainable soon. This took place in January 2015 in the US. A little bit of backstory. I had known my roommate Alex for 3 years at the time of the event. We met through a mutual friend and figured that I could use a Hispanic roommate when I moved to the States to go to college because I too am a Spanish speaker. I always thought that he was rather odd and possibly homosexual, but that never bugged me, considering that I have several homosexual family members. Alex never spoke about his sexuality near me. In fact, I had every reason to believe he was homosexual because of the way he talked, dressed, and behaved overall. The thing that always struck me as weird is the fact that he would constantly make fun of homosexuals. After some time, my brother Jacob and I got extremely surprised when he introduced us to his new girlfriend, Kelly. I remember saying, "Wow, I guess he's not gay after all," to my brother as a joke. Kelly seemed nice and all, but she didn't live in town. So Alex and Kelly were having a long-distance relationship and always spent their free time on Skype talking. After some time, my brother and I realized that Alex was coming home quite late. My brother then assumed that Alex was cheating on Kelly because he noticed that Alex would come back rather exhausted, wearing his shirts inside out. It was none of our business, so we kept our theories to ourselves. One day, Kelly came to visit. While she was visiting, she discovered that Alex had a dating site on his phone. She also realized that the dating site was for homosexuals, and he had several messages that talked about some sexual encounters that had happened in the past. She also came to realize that he was on Craigslist looking for one-night stands with men. Kelly was beyond furious with him, and made him write a public apology on Facebook. Alex was a graduate student and had many of his colleagues, teachers, and even his advertisers on Facebook. Everyone knew what he had done. Alex was devastated. He wasn't really talking to Jacob or me after the incident. Some weeks went by, and things weren't getting any better. He was also financially broken, still in really bad shape. I noticed that he'd stopped eating and was only drinking coffee and reading the Bible. And I apologize for the long backstory, but I think it's necessary for this story to make sense and context. Now to the day of the incident. I went to school that day and had plans to go eat with my girlfriend after. When we meant to go eat, I had a weird feeling that I needed to go home. I didn't know why, but one thing was certain at the time, and that was that I had to cancel my lunch plans and go back home. My girlfriend thought it was weird, but she said okay. When I arrived, I noticed that Alex was sitting in the living room basically staring at nothing. I attempted to start a conversation with him. I said, "Alex, are you okay? I've noticed that you've been really stressed out lately. Do you want to talk about it?" But he didn't answer. It was like Alex didn't even acknowledge that I was in the room with him. So I said, "I guess I'll leave you to your thoughts then." I went upstairs to the bathroom. When I was done with my business, I heard some screaming and yelling coming from downstairs. I remember saying out loud, "What is that?" I was slowly making my way downstairs when I started hearing growling, followed by laughter, followed by growling again. It was weird. When I got downstairs, I saw Alex on the floor of the living room, twisting his body like he was in pain. I remember asking, "Alex, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" But he didn't answer. He just kept on screaming and laughing. I was in shock. What was actually going on here? I remember screaming at him, "Snap out of it, dude!" The room felt cold, really cold. He kept twisting his body like he was having an epileptic seizure. At one point he stopped, and then he looked at me. His eyes were completely rolled back, so all I could see was white, and in a demonic voice in perfect English he said, "It's the devil." I froze. Alex was also from a Hispanic-speaking country, so he had a very thick accent. How could he possibly be speaking in this perfect, attenuated English? After saying that, he started speaking a weird language. It was like he was speaking backwards. He kept twisting his body around, and now his tongue was moving like a snake, like the little girl from The Exorcist. I didn't know exactly what to do. I thought of recording it, but I was too scared to do so. I went outside the house and saw my neighbor. I told him what was happening. I even opened the door so he could see what Alex was doing. All he said to me was, "Sorry, bro, I'm late for class. Good luck." Thanks for nothing, I thought to myself. I called a friend of Alex who was a pastor. We'll call him Daniel. I knew Daniel because him and his wife would invite us to dinner every once in a while. I hadn't spoken to him for at least a year because Alex suddenly stopped talking about him. I remember saying, "I know we haven't talked in a really long time. This is going to sound crazy, but Alex is laying in my living room claiming he's the devil." Daniel's reply went a little like this. "No, doesn't sound that weird. I've dealt with similar situations in my life. I'm on the way." When I went back into my house, my heart dropped. Alex was lying face up, holding a butcher knife against his stomach. He was still moving his tongue. My first thought was to take the knife away from him, but then I figured that he was unstable. A swing with that knife could end my life if I attempted to get close. I went back outside to call Daniel again, saying, "Alex is holding a knife against himself. What do I do?" And he responded, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't want you to get hurt, bud. Just wait for me outside. I'm almost there." When Daniel arrived, I showed him the way to Alex. When we got into the house, I couldn't believe my eyes. I yelled, "Hey, should I call 911? It took Daniel a little longer to acknowledge what was happening. There he was, my roommate, lying on the floor, pulling out his own intestines out of his own body. There was blood all over the floor. He just kept pulling them out. Daniel told me to go outside and call 911 immediately, so I did. I probably sounded like a complete lunatic to the dispatch operator when I explained everything to her. She said that an ambulance and the cops were on their way, asking to tell me exactly what I had told her. When I went back inside, Daniel had stopped Alex from pulling his intestines out of his body. He started praying over him. He said, "I demand to speak to Alex in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ." But all we got back from Alex was the weird language he was speaking and the growling. When the paramedics arrived, they started working on Alex and realized he was completely out of it. They kept telling Alex to hold on, that everything was going to be okay. Alex lost consciousness, call it that. They immediately took him to urgent care. My friend called, and I said I couldn't talk at the moment. I told her with very short detail what was happening and hung up. The cops then questioned me and Daniel. They asked me if there were any drugs or alcohol at the house, if Alex was on medication, questions such as that. They questioned me repeatedly. Different cops asked me to tell them what had happened. They even made me write it down. This sucked because I was still trying to process what I had witnessed. However, as cops, it is their jobs to be suspicious. Making me repeat my statement is a technique to see if I change the story. Jacob arrived shortly after, and the police questioned him too. When they were questioning Daniel, he told them that he could assure them that I had nothing to do with Alex's injuries. Even after all the questioning, the police took me into custody thinking I was responsible for what Alex did. After hours at the police station, they finally let me go. Daniel picked me up at the gas station and he took me to the hospital to see how Alex was doing. We arrived at the hospital and they told us he was in really bad shape and he was still in surgery. I was able to see him for about 4 hours after. He held my hand and apologized. He was barely awake. Daniel then took me back to the house. We kept discussing what had happened and he told me that Alex was possessed by a demon. That's why he was able to speak in a different language and do what he did. I told him that I was afraid of staying in the house, so he agreed that he was just have to help me bless the house. When we arrived, Jacob had already taken care of the blood. He told me that the cops took the knife as evidence. Good thing I didn't touch the knife. My girlfriend was there to comfort me and try to calm me down. My adrenaline was still going like crazy. She said she would stay the night with me and make me feel better. To be honest, I couldn't thank her enough for that. Not everyone would be willing to stay at that house after something like that. I was afraid that the same thing was going to happen to her in the middle of the night. Weeks later, I learned that she was thinking the same thing about me, and that she was extremely scared of staying with me that night. My girlfriend and I went to bed. I fell asleep quite quickly because I had had a really traumatic day. Unfortunately, my dream was a continuation of that very same day. In the dream, I decided that I didn't want to stay at the house after that stuff with Alex, so my girlfriend and I ended up going to a hotel. At the hotel, still in my dream, I remember asking my girlfriend, how can somebody be in such bad shape that it would allow something that dark to take over their bodies? Shortly after we went to bed, I was basically sleeping within my dream when I heard a knock on the door. I looked at the clock and it was 7:03. I said, screw it. I'm so tired after what I went through that I'm just going to ignore it. Then I thought it would be news about Alex, so I got up and looked through the people. All I could see was an empty hallway, when suddenly, out of nothing, I saw a creature running insanely fast towards the door, hitting it very hard and laughing the moment of impact. The creature looked like that demon from Insidious, or Darth Maul as they call it, a black and red face. I backed away and kept hearing the laughter. I was so angry after that I punched the door right back. After punching the door, I heard the creature laugh again, and it said, "Walk later." I woke up right after. I have always wondered if the creature I saw in my dream was the same creature that possibly took over Alex's body. Alex barely survived the incident. He spent 2 months in the hospital because of severe internal damage. I had to go to therapy for a very long time because of what had happened. I couldn't drink or smoke at my own house because I would dream about Alex standing up with his intestines out and screaming and staring at me. Alex got better. He sent some people to get his stuff out of the house. He was too embarrassed to stay or even pick them up himself, and I really didn't want to see him after everything that happened. This has been probably the worst experience of my life. The cops that I talked to said that I did exactly what I should have done in that situation. They said that without any medical attention, Alex would have been dead in minutes. They also told me that that was probably one of the weirdest incidences that they had ever worked. My girlfriend and I believe that thanks to the strange sensation I had of urgently having to go home instead of going out to lunch with her, Alex is still alive today. This is something that's been happening continuously. I want to ask if someone can figure out what it is that's happening. So, every time me and my wife and my stepchild move to somewhere, new strange things begin to happen. First, we were living in one old house, in the town we both grew up. The house is from her grandmother who passed away in that same house years ago. She told me that her brother saw an old man walking around the house. He thought maybe someone looking for his dad or something. That was until he saw him vanish. Also, there was this one time that they saw a little kid playing around the hallway, entering the rooms. My first thought is that she wanted to see if I was scared of ghosts, or maybe scared of the stories. I wasn't sure. That was until one day, I saw by the edge of my sight a little kid peeking over the door. He looked all grayish and was possibly dressed in 70s-like attire. I told my wife I saw the little kid, and a week later, we got out of that house. It was unplanned. The night we got out, we were at dinner. We were eating and talking about something. I don't remember right now exactly. My stepchild was playing with my sister-in-law's dog, and I was seeing them playing behind my wife's back. And then I heard something. It was like a squeak. I stopped talking about what we were talking about and told my wife that she had heard it too. And then I looked to my left and saw that old, dirty Fisher-Price red car with yellow top. My stepchild had one, but it was so old and a little rusty, and we thought the squeak came from it. Then I moved just an inch or two of the little car, and it makes the exact same noise. We both looked at each other, and I told her, "The car just moved by itself, or what?" She just stared at me and told me she saw the little car moving a little, but nobody was near or close to the car. We start talking about other unrelated stuff, and I go to bed with my stepchild. My wife was in the shower, and when she came out to our bedroom, she told me that she had had this little old rag in the shower. It was all dry, and since nobody uses it, it was hanging there. Then all of a sudden the rag falls. I thought she was scared by the fact that in an hour or two, she thought she saw the little toy car moving by itself, and I started to tell her maybe that was her that dropped the rag, maybe the wind in the car, etc. I was trying to calm her, but I know it can't be the wind moving the car since there was not a source of wind inside the house. So we started watching a comedy movie to forget about what we had just experienced. My stepchild was seeing videos of my wife's cell phone, and we turned off the lights. We were falling asleep when my stepchild was fully awake and started to hug my wife incredibly hard. She was telling her that there was a monster and was looking at us. She was visibly scared and was pointing to the doorway. It was pitch black and the doorway was behind my back. By that time I was trying to convince myself that she was saying oyster or Easter or something else, but monster. I was petrified. She started to tell us that the monster had little red eyes and was looking at us and was angry. I stood up and turned the light on to convince her that there was nothing there, but my wife was just too scared to pass the night there. We ended up in my parents' house and then just go back for our clothes and stuff until the next day. We lived with my parents for around 2 or 3 weeks, and then I had to move to another country for a business opportunity. We were living outside the city in a ranch. Everything was good until a couple of months later. It started again. I wake up in the middle of the night to hear what seems to be a little kid laughing, and my skin turning itself off by themselves. We both experienced this phenomenon. It happened every day too, but mostly by night. The last day I was there, I was about to close the door and heard coins being dropped on the floor, and there was nobody else there. I was there for about 3 or 4 months until we got a new house. It's new, everything was brand new. We've been here since then. Everything was okay since yesterday. I was making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and stored the jelly in the pantry. I closed the door and go to watch TV, when all of a sudden I heard a noise coming from it. I go there and open the pantry and see the jelly jar open with the cap by its side. Now, I remember closing it. And later that night, I was ready to go to bed, and I was making sure all the doors are closed when I heard another noise coming from the pantry. And this time, it was a soup bag, and it seemed to have fallen by itself. I had checked out if there were mouses or rats in the house, but there are absolutely none. Now, is there any possibility that something is following us? My sister-in-law said once that my stepchild isn't baptized. She thinks that she may be stopped by something. So this happened a few days ago. I'm currently taking care of a dog and 3 cats for a family while they're on vacation. I don't mind. I've taken care of pets before. It's extra money. Anyway, the house is on a little back road with other smaller back roads next to it. The houses are pretty close to each other. The family's house has a small patch of woods behind it. I was at a concert with a friend and I wanted to stop by the house before we went home. It was around 11:45 p.m. I went inside and let the dog out the back door. I went onto the porch and looked over the woods. There was a huge, perfectly square light in the woods. It actually looked like a window. It was like sunlight was being reflected perfectly in the wilderness. I could see perfectly into the woods even though it was close to midnight. I was more confused at first. I thought it may have been a reflection from the porch light in the window. I carried a taser that's also a flashlight. I shined my flashlight onto it and looked closer. It started to make less sense. No window reflection is that big. I got kind of freaked out and got the dog back in the house. I made sure the cats and dog had water before I locked all the doors. I ran inside and told my friend who was waiting in the car. I wanted to go back and look and take a picture of it. She was too scared to go with me. I went back anyways, went around the side of the house and took a look, but it was gone. I had turned off the porch light. It started to make even less sense the more I thought about it. It wasn't there the previous night. It's been 2 nights in a row now I haven't seen it. If I see it again, I will upload a picture. It still doesn't make sense to me. Can somebody please explain what I could have seen? The youngest daughter of the family is terrified of their woods, and she won't really explain why. She just said she heard strange noises back there. Something about those woods does freak me out. My grandparents had woods, and I used to play back there all the time as a kid. The woods never really freaked me out. But this area of the woods just gives me a weird vibe. I remember what happened so vividly, even though it was about 13 years ago. I was about 7 at the time, living my daily life as any child would. Playing, dropping to the floor as a game, pranking my parents, putting water inside a half-empty toothpaste container. You know, kid stuff. There's this day in question, we were doing an activity in history class, cutting out what we call Láminas de la Independencia here in Mexico, when all of a sudden I hear an airplane passing by. Pretty normal, especially in a city like Monterrey. The sound started as a fade-in, slowly superimposing itself over everything else. Sometimes the sound could be pretty loud, except this time, it wasn't. Nobody heard anything. Except for me, it was the opposite. I heard nothing but the screech of turbine blasting itself inside my eardrums like a drill from construction waking you up in the morning, uninvited and inadvertent. I remember feeling numb, something like the world tilting itself sideways like it was flipping itself over. I covered my ears because it was almost literally deafening. The sound would not become muffled even in the slightest. It felt like it was coming inside my own head. Added to my confusion was the behavior of my classmates, completely neutral to the event, not a sign of alteration in their attitude towards the current affair. It took around 5 seconds for the sound to slowly fade in. The classroom was pretty loud itself, given that 7-year-olds are not known for keeping quiet, but I couldn't hear a single soul during the whole time, not even the person right beside me. Once the sound stopped, I couldn't believe what just happened, so I tried to confirm the occurrence with the people around me. First was my buddy I could always trust to be honest, his name Oscar. He said he didn't hear a thing. I was flabbergasted by that statement and thought he was playing a prank, and so I went with another girl, with the same answer. I wasn't sure of what was happening anymore, given how promptly their replies were. Honestly, the thoughts of a prank left me right there. I decided to ask the teacher. She said she didn't hear anything either. Nobody heard the airplane. After school, I told my dad about what happened. He said that indeed it was very strange. He suggested the idea that I had encountered another dimension for a brief period of time, since he was at the time studying a lot of metaphysics. I was always very imaginative, but the elaborations in my mind were always so intensely far away from what could be real that it was always obvious when I was making things up. This occasion wasn't one of those made-up fantasies. What kid would fantasize about something like this, especially when it causes a physically unpleasant disturbance in your life? And thus, in 5 seconds the story began, and in a minute it was dismantled by the unawareness of those around me, if there was anything to be aware of at all at that moment. I felt like this was the right place to talk about this very strange, inexplicable experience. I don't think I went crazy in that moment, but instead that I went somewhere else. possibly outside of an airplane, albeit not physically. What do you guys think? Alright, so a bit of background information. I'm a 15-year-old male, and this happened about 2 years ago. My mother works at a facility that is basically a dry cleaning factory that's like a send-and delivery service for clothing of all kinds. I had been going to this factory for around 5 years since my mom worked hella late hours, around 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And my dad was working out of town during this time period, and I lived about 30 miles away from my school, so I didn't have any other options. Since I had been coming to my mother's workplace for years, I knew the general layout of the building pretty well, which explains events later into the story. So this was like any other day. I had gotten out of school on a Thursday, and as usual, I was driving over to the plant to hang out for a few hours while my mom worked. Around 6:30 p.m. to 7 p.m., my mom was notified by her manager that she needed to leave the plant to run some kind of business errand of his. I don't know what. So she told me she was going to go run said errand, and then she would be back in around an hour or so. I was kind of annoyed that I would have to spend extra time there, but I didn't really complain. Since it was pretty much closing time, my mother and I were the only people still present at the factory, and with her running this errand for her boss, that left me the factory by myself. My mother allowed me to use her work computer to watch YouTube while she was gone, so that was a plus side to staying at this plant alone. After she had left, I just sat down in her office and chair and messed around on the computer and did homework. Around 45 minutes later, I was wondering where she was, as she had not returned. Man, she's probably chatting with customers, I said to myself, as she is prone to doing so, being the extroverted woman she is. All of a sudden, all the power suddenly shut down, leaving me in darkness in her office. I was startled by this sudden power outage, and I assumed that since the building was old and the electrical wiring was shoddy, fuses had been blown or something like that. So I opened the door of my mom's office and looked out into the factory. Some emergency lights were on, but they barely lit the factory at all, so I was still pretty much in the dark. I took out my phone and turned on my flashlight to search for the fuse box. As I'd been going to the factory for 5 years, I knew where the box was and found it relatively quickly. But when I was walking up to the box, I noticed something wasn't right. The fuse box was wide open, and I saw the door swinging ever so slightly. Now, I was a little nervous, but I assumed for some reason that maybe a draft had caused it to open. Don't ask why. So I walked up to the fuse box, and my heart fell out of my body as I saw the wires in the fuse box had been cut. Now I was scared and not sure what to do, knowing that I most likely wasn't alone anymore in that factory. I was thinking of my options when I spotted something out of the corner of my eye. I was looking in the direction of the back exit, which was about 10 feet away to the left of the wall with the fuse box. And I noticed that there was a slightly darker shape amidst the dark wall of the factory, about 30 feet to the right of the back exit, and I could see a subtle glint of light from the emergency lights on the figure. I noticed it, and was sure that it was a person holding a sharp object. My heart was racing at this point, but I played it off like I hadn't noticed them and casually started walking to the exit. I made it to the exit and began to turn the knob, when I heard loud steps approaching. Not running towards me, more like a kind of race walk towards me. I threw the door open and ran out to the outside, where a motion light came on and flooded the area with a white light. I had to act quickly, knowing I didn't have much time before whoever that was came out of the door. So thinking on my feet, I ran to and dove underneath one of the vans used for pickup and delivery for the clothes that the factory owned. I wasn't under the van for more than 4 seconds before the unknown person opened the door and stepped out into the motion light. The van was far enough away from the door so, at an angle, I could get a look at this intruder. It was what I assumed to be a medium-sized man wearing black pants and a black hoodie. He was also wearing one of those smiling masks from the Purge movie. My suspicions were also confirmed when I saw that he was carrying a large piece of sharp metal in his hand. I tried thinking about my options of survival here, as I'm not very athletic at all, so running was a no-no. I was horrified to see that he had started checking underneath the other vans looking for me, so I didn't have much time to decide my next course of action. The guy was getting closer and closer to my van, and I was sure that I was dead when a miracle happened. I saw my mom pulling into the front of the lot of the factory, and the guy noticed her too, so we ran off into the darkness. I I waited another 3 minutes or so before running back into the building via the back exit, and I saw my mom looking for me under one of the emergency lights. I ran to her crying, trying to explain what had happened. I showed her the cut wires of the fuse, and needless to say, police were called. They took my statement of what happened, but nothing ever came of it. When I first met the Bagman, I was 16. I didn't even think he was anything to worry about at the time. He just passed me by while I was biking around in one of my city's forest preserves called Riverside. Riverside was always a place I could go when I was feeling stressed or anxious. So when I passed by this rugged-looking guy in the middle of the woods, I didn't think anything of it. I had other things on my mind, and for all I know, I could have looked pretty rugged myself, being all sweaty and wearing a black hoodie and biking around like a maniac. He and I were similarly dressed. I didn't have long to look at them as I was passing by on my bike pretty quickly, but he was wearing black sweatpants that were ripped in several places along the muddy white shoes, and a black hoodie which he wore with the hood down. I could also make out that he was a pretty big guy in all areas. He was fairly wide and was actually pretty tall. His hair was brown and down to his shoulders. I couldn't really make out his face at the time, but little did I know I would see it in a few weeks. When he saw me coming towards him on my bike, he held up his hand all excitedly and waved at me and then began to jog while I got closer. I thought, at the time, that maybe he was out here exercising like me and seeing me made him remember to start running again or something. But as I passed him, he got so close to my bike that he almost bumped into me. I had to swerve a little to the right to try to avoid him, barely missing him. When I passed him, I kind of heard him shout something back at me, but I couldn't really understand what it was because I had my headphones in. I shrugged the situation off as I continued to bike back to my car. It took me a few minutes to get back to the parking lot, and I was pretty exhausted as I loaded my bike into the back of my minivan. Once I closed the truck, I looked around for a moment to see if the guy I had seen earlier was around. I didn't see him, but the only other car that was parked there was directly across from me on the other side of the lot. It was a long white van, like the stereotypical creeper van. It was dirty and muddy like the man driving it, and the windows were tinted so you couldn't really see inside. Thinking back on this situation now, it could have been totally possible that that man followed behind me all the way to the parking lot and had gotten into this creepy van before I could see him and was in there while I was staring at that vehicle. He could have been watching me through those dark windows and I didn't even know. When I pulled out of the parking lot, I made sure that the van stayed in its place as I passed by and drove home. That was my first encounter with the Bagman. But obviously that meeting isn't what gave him his name. A little over 3 weeks later after my experience at Riverside, I was home alone and it was approximately 4 p.m. I was watching YouTube on my phone while laying in bed upstairs in my room. My dog was next to me and we were both just chilling until my dad came home from work. While I was up to go to the bathroom, I heard the doorbell ring and 2 loud bangs on the door. Now, usually when someone pounded on the door like that, it was almost always my mom because she, for some reason, likes to freak out the dog when she gets home, and a few loud bangs on the door will do the job. So, my dog went running out of my room and tore down the steps to get to the front door. I followed behind him, but didn't really feel like running. When I finally got to the door, I swung it open, expecting to see my mom. It wasn't her. It was the guy from Riverside. He was just standing there with a big black garbage bag in his hand. He was wearing almost the same outfit that he was wearing when I saw him last, except his shoes were all clean now. I looked at his face and saw he had a poorly trimmed beard that covered most of his face. His eyes were a bright blue and they stared down at me. He spoke before I had any chance to say anything. This would be a rough paraphrase of what he said, as I don't exactly remember. Hi there, young man. Is Melanie around? I'd love to see her. He didn't actually say Melanie, but I want to replace the name because I actually did know who he was asking for, and she lived a few houses down. No, I don't know who that is, sorry. I think at this point, I had given him some kind of smile to try to act like I wasn't completely freaked out. You see, I always park my minivan out right in front of my house, so it's always in view whenever I'm home. This means that he probably recognized it, and me. As if on cue, he says, I think I know you from somewhere, pal. His voice was deep and haunting. It just kind of left me stunned. I stood there and didn't say anything and shrugged my shoulders. That's when he started to shake that bag. I don't really know how else to describe what he was doing. He was just shaking the bag up and down. I never actually saw what was inside it, but it sounded like a whole bunch of metal cookie cutters rattling around. The contents were poking and stretching the bag out in weird angles. He was still staring at me as he shook the bag and inched closer to me. Are you sure you don't know where Melanie is? He continued to shake the bag as he got closer and closer until we were nearly touching. My breath was shaking. Just gotten in trouble for peeing on the couch. Then, I snapped and pushed him away from me as hard as I could. His skin was flabby and soft, and his shirt felt greasy. I used all my strength to get him away from me. I didn't look back as I did a 180 and sped back into my house, slamming the door once I was back inside. I could hear him pound his heavy arms against the door and the clamoring of whatever was in that bag. He banged on the door for maybe 30 seconds before he stopped abruptly. I quickly sped towards the window to see if he was still standing there, and as I moved to the side to get a better angle of the doorway, I saw him looking back at me. When we met eyes, he immediately started running back to his van, which was parked across the street. I recognized it as the same one from Riverside. I was disappointed to see that there weren't any front license plate numbers, but as the van started to move and pass my house, I took down the numbers and letters that were on the back of the van. I still have them written down on my phone. Since that incident, I haven't seen the man since. I notified Melanie that some man was asking around for her. She said she had no idea who he might be and that she would tell her parents to look out for anyone that looked like who I had seen, just in case he managed to find her or her house, but it doesn't end there. About a year later, my mom and I were having lunch and she was actually scrolling through Facebook when she came upon a post from a woman who lived in the neighborhood next to ours. The woman wrote that a man driving a white van drove up to her house and knocked on the door, which her young daughter answered. The man had apparently asked her to get in his van because he had the circus in there. Apparently the mom came to the door in time before anything bad happened, but the man was still being creepy. Unfortunately, the woman didn't post a description of the man, but she definitely remembered the white van. Now, I don't know exactly what the circus means, but I am almost positive it's the same man that visited my house, and I am pretty sure he is still out there preying on people, because just yesterday on the local news they interviewed a 9-year-old girl who was approached by a man driving a white van. So please, if you live in the central Illinois area of the US, please look out for anyone or anything matching what I said in my story. This creep is most likely still out there because he keeps coming up on social media and the news. Stay safe, everyone. This happened back in April. I went to the movie theater, alone, for the midnight showing of the new Avengers movie. I usually wait until the lobby is completely empty before I buy myself a snack and a drink. As I was filling up my cup at the soda fountain, a man came up beside me and said, "Are you here for Infinity War?" I politely replied, "Yeah, I've been ready to see it for a while." He just smiled back. He said nothing, and just stared at me. He then said with a teeth-showing grin, "Enjoy the movie," and walked away. Okay, that was weird, I said to myself. It was about 2:30 to 3 when I finally get out of the movie theater. I usually go to the restroom until the place empties out. I have severe social anxiety. Now, I always park near the exit of this theater because the parking is terrible. It was completely empty when I started walking to my car. I started hearing a faint whistle in the near distance. This theater is right next to about 8 acres of nothing but trees. That's exactly where the whistling was coming from, and my car was parked right next to it. The whistling grew louder as I got closer to my vehicle. I was on full alert as I got up to my vehicle before I could unlock my door. I hear footsteps and the whistling right behind me. I turned around as fast as I could, and there he was. The man who came up to me at the soda fountain was standing inches away from me, with the same deranged smile he had earlier. Now, I'm 5'3" and 115 pounds. This man had to be around 6'4" to 6'5" tall and nearly twice my height. He grabbed me by my hair, and smacked my head against the driver's side door. That's all I remember before waking up. When I woke up, I was in the backseat of my car with nothing but a pair of socks on. My vision was blurry, but I could barely see that the man was inside a gas station talking to the cashier. The key was still in the ignition, so I dragged myself to the driver's seat, shifted the vehicle, and got out of there. I must have been driving for about an hour before I realized that it was almost 7 a.m. I went to my mom's house and had a complete mental breakdown, telling her everything. She took me to the hospital because, without even realizing it, I was bleeding from multiple areas. I had gashes all over my abdomen, and my right eye was completely swollen shut. I was admitted. They did a bunch of tests. A couple of police officers came in and talked to me. I gave them a statement and thanked them for trying their best to figure everything out. It is now June, and I have heard nothing. No arrests made. But 2 more girls have been assaulted around that area since. And I hope I never see that man who took away my sanity that night again. For context, in the present, I am a 21-year-old male. When the story took place, I was an 18-year-old female. I'm transgender, and the story happened before I began transitioning when I presented as a female. I had this best friend who, for the sake of the story, I shall deem Carly. Carly was a few years older than I was, more outgoing and more interested in drug experimentation than I was. This being the case, it led to her to meet all sorts of characters, which in turn led us into some very interesting situations. This one being no different, just more dangerous. I received a text from her which read along the lines of, "Hey, my friend invited us to go over. You down?" I had nothing better to do, and she was at the time my best friend. Not thinking twice, I agreed and prepared to be picked up by her. When we were together, we went to her place for our ritual bong hoots before taking off on our adventure. Her explaining how her friend lives in the next town over, which was a 40-minute drive at least. Once we were satisfied with our high, we set off to this friend's place. I do want to mention that I recognize how dangerous of behavior this was for us to be operating a vehicle under the influence. Looking back at it, it was very irresponsible, and we were putting not only ourselves, but everyone on the road at risk with our behavior. The drive to this guy's house was nothing to write home about. When I arrived, I was introduced to who I'll call Liam and his friend Daniel. After I was acquainted with Carly's new friends, we set off into their basement to the designated smoke room to hang out. It wasn't a very big room, no bigger than a decently sized ensuite bathroom. It spotted a TV setup, coffee table, and couch. The only other available seating was a bunch of pillows and blankets inside the closet adjacent to the couch. After smoking some more, Carly and I chose to sit inside the closet on top of the cushioning. There wasn't a lot of room, but we didn't mind being pressed together in a small space. I don't remember what the events or conversation was leading up to this moment, but in a split second, the whole vibe changed. Liam leaned over the armrest of the couch so his body faced us. Since we were sitting practically on the floor from our point of view, we were staring up at him. "Do you know that I could jump off this couch and start strangling you right now if I wanted to?" He said this with beady eyes darting from the both of us. This is when my heart started racing and my body froze. Carly was unfazed. She took it as a challenge and laughed in his face. Liam reached behind to grab a long piece of material that I soon identified as a shoelace. "You think this is a joke?" he taunted. "I'll wrap this around your pretty little necks." Again, Carly laughed, oblivious to the seriousness in his demeanor, thinking he was just playing a prank. He looked at me. "Do I scare you?" While cocking his head slightly. I didn't respond. I stared through him while my heart raced. "You know, if I wanted to, I could end you right now. I could do it. If I really wanted to, I could." Then something in him changed. He was back to the pleasant guy he was when I first met him. He plopped himself back into his seat and chatted idly with his friend Daniel. I had enough. I wanted to go. I wanted to leave then and there. I texted Carly, who brushed me off and said we should stay a little longer. She was having fun, she said. I excused myself to the bathroom where I began to have a full-blown panic attack. At this point it was 1 a.m. I was somewhere I'd never been before and an hour's drive to my house. I called my friend, who answered promptly. At this point I was trying to hush my hysterical cries on the phone. I relayed the situation to my friend, how this guy I didn't know was threatening us, how I knew he wasn't joking, but how Carly was playing it off as he was. After a few moments, I had calmed down and my friend offered to drive the hour to come get me. I declined as while on the phone with him, Carly texted me saying how she was gathering her stuff and that we would leave. I got off the phone with my friend and calmed myself down further before leaving the upstairs bathroom. Standing in the middle of the dark kitchen was Liam. I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard his voice. "Are you okay? You seem upset." I didn't answer. I rushed past him downstairs to collect my things and Carly. We didn't speak about what happened on the way home. I did bring it up because we experienced it from two completely different perspectives. I didn't mention it earlier, but Liam was some guy she had met on a dating website, Plenty of Fish. She was infatuated with this guy, so it clouded her judgment of what a piece of work he was. Much later on after this night, Liam was arrested. It was discovered by medical professionals after he was released that he suffered from a plethora of previously undiagnosed mental health issues. Out of respect for his privacy, I won't detail what they were. I will say that they were most definitely the root of his behavior. The last time that I had heard about him, he had been placed on antipsychotic medication. I hope that man continues to get the help he deserves, especially before he harms himself, or anyone else, for that matter. At the time of the story, I was around 3 or 4 years old. I'm 18 now. I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl, and I've always liked to think of myself as a pretty nice person. A little backstory to my situation. I was living with my mom, grandma, and aunt in a duplex located in a fairly large city. Believe it or not, the city that I did happen to live in didn't have a whole lot of creepy people, or my family was just very good at keeping me from that side of the world. My mom had recently gotten out of an abusive relationship with this guy who happened to be my dad, and we were going through a pretty rough patch. A few more months passed and it was Christmas time. On this particular day, my mom and I were at the store buying some groceries. It was a completely normal trip. That was until we got to the end of it. We stood in line to check out, and some lady was on her way in when she noticed me and abruptly approached. She was probably in her late 30s, early 40s with long brown hair that reached to about the middle of her back. She was a little shorter than my mom. She was 5'10", and was pretty skinny. She smiled, and I assumed it was supposed to be warming, but it was far from it. She said hello in a semi-friendly tone. I smiled back and said hello, trying to be polite. I tried to scoot closer to my mom, but there was a cart in between us. This woman then started asking me questions such as, "How old are you? Is that your mom?" Part of me found no harm in answering her questions, and the other part of me was hoping if I gave her what she wanted, she would leave us alone. I told her what she wanted to know, and she continued to get closer and closer with every minute. She then asked me if I had seen Santa yet. My youthful eyes grew wide and my heart raced, excitement getting the better of me. I told her I hadn't and asked where he was. She explained that he was in the back of the store and that she could take me to him. Before she could get another word in, I turned to my mom and asked her loudly if I could go with this person to go see Santa. She looked at me confused and realized the woman standing there, and you could see her mama bear attitude start to kick in. She smiled, obviously annoyed at this person standing uncomfortably close to her kid. She then started talking directly to the stranger, letting her know that we were going to the mall soon to take pictures with him anyway, and that she appreciates the offer, but it wouldn't be necessary. She quickly paid for our food and started to push the cart out from between me and her. The woman then insisted it was no big deal and that she would bring me back as soon as I got to see him. She then proceeded to grab my arm lightly and tug me in one way. My mom became horrified as she rushed to my side and lifted me into the cart and insisted we didn't need her help. The woman then had the audacity to tell my mom to suit herself in an annoyed tone and turn on my heel out of the store, not shopping at all. She never had a cart or handheld basket. I have since moved from that city and moved out to be on my own and have luckily never seen this woman again, and have been lucky enough not to run into any more situations like this. I think back to this scenario every once in a while and think of what would have happened had I not asked my mom to go with this stranger, or if she had grabbed my arm more forcefully and pulled me away without caring what kind of attention she might get. I'm glad the situation played out how it did though. I know this is long overdue, and I've never really thought to have a reason to say this until now. The creepy lady in the store. No, I don't want to meet Sam. Before I begin, I'd just like to say that I'm a normal 19-year-old guy with no history of mental illness or drug usage. Those facts will be important later. A few months ago, I had my first real, unexplainable experience late at night. I was sleeping in the living room of my grandmother's house due to the lack of bedrooms, and for the most part, the night seemed normal. I just stayed up until about 11 at night and decided I should get to sleep before work in the morning. I woke up at about 3 a.m. or some ungodly hour in the early morning to an eerie feeling that someone may be watching me. Soon after, I heard a kind of gentle scraping. This only became more terrifying because, situated behind me, was a large glass door out of my line of sight. I didn't move because I almost didn't want to see what was giving me the paranoid feeling, or what could be peering inside at me making that noise. Like a kid hiding under the covers, I just tried to go back to sleep, but feeling so uncomfortably scared I couldn't. It took all of my willpower to try and keep my eyes closed, as I knew if I had opened them, whatever was there would know that I wasn't asleep. Eventually, I couldn't resist looking out the large glass window, so I shifted my body on one side so that I could very narrowly open my eyes to peek at what made that noise outside. Still, it sounded as if though someone was shuffling their feet on the back porch outside the door, but terror set in as I didn't know if the door was actually locked. Slowly, I opened my eyes ever so slightly to see something that I know I wasn't supposed to see. Right outside the door, standing maybe 6 feet tall, was a black figure in a long cloak sort of outfit. It was not human, but it seemed to be human-like. His eyes were so big and black that I was almost stunned. He was raising his hand and scraping what looked like long, thin fingers down the glass, up and down, over and over, so slowly. I was in a state of complete panic. Should I scream? Should I run? Or should I just lay there where I was hoping that this was all some horrible dream? That last thought somehow claimed me a bit. This couldn't be real, as I had been asleep, and this seems a very rational explanation. However, my brain began to realize that I was in the exact same room I had fallen asleep in, and there was no way that this was just a dream. My horror returned in waves as I knew that he was still there, and the door may be locked for him to enter as soon as he grabs the door handle. I knew I had to take it upon myself to lock the door, and I had to do it quick because any moment he could get inside. My adrenaline kicked in full force as I threw my covers aside, jumping off the couch and starting a mad dash towards the door. As I got up, it saw me and made a horrible scream. It didn't stop my efforts, and I continued towards the door as fast as I could. I fumbled with the lock and was able to engage it quickly. Slowly, I lifted my gaze from the handle through the door into the face of what had caused me all this terror. It stood there, motionless. Its hands had stopped the constant scraping on the glass. It just stared back at me as I felt helpless and paralyzed. After a moment, it began to walk away from the door into the field behind our house. I watched it go until it was out of sight, never leaving my post at the door. Hours later, I went back to the couch and passed out, still writhed with fear. In the morning, I told no one from fear of them not believing me. I wasn't ready to accept the fact that either I was crazy or I had experienced something that no one would ever believe or understand. A few days later, I had tried my best to push whatever it was out of my mind. I had resumed my normal activities, and as I drove home from my night classes at about 10 p.m., I felt as if though I had finally moved past it. I drove down a long stretch of road only dimly lit by gas stations and truck stops. I noticed a figure in between the illuminated signs and empty buildings. It stood there. It watched my car approach, and it followed my car with its head until I was far down the road and out of sight. It didn't move. It just watched and knew that it was me. A few months have passed, and I haven't had any more experiences, but I am always very cautious, as it may be watching me again. So my fiance moved in with me at my parents' house about a month ago, and we both noticed some weird things that have been happening primarily to us. I've always had weird things happen to me, especially after we moved 2 years ago, but it all seems to have gotten worse when we moved in. The first thing I've noticed is small injuries on me and him. I've woken up with small cuts on my hand and wrist over the last few weeks, and then suddenly a large scratch down my leg. As for him, he has woken up with a bruise on his forehead that looked almost like a thumbprint. We don't have anything near or in our bed that could cause these minor injuries, and it's just weird. The really scary thing that happened, though, was that the other night when he was sleeping, he started talking and pointing to something in the corner of my room. I woke up and looked over and saw a dark shadow for a few seconds, and then it was gone. He had been speaking panic gibberish for the entire thing until suddenly he very clearly says, "She's spinning." I was really freaked out by then and asked him to repeat himself. He said, "Yeah, she's over there spinning," and then promptly went back to bed, leaving me alone to panic. Before he moved in, at least 3 people, including myself, have all heard a woman outside my hall to me in my sister's rooms talking and crying. We've heard it all around the same time and the same nights. My mom's boyfriend even asked me who I was talking to that night since he assumed it was one of us. I only mention this because my fiance had talked about a woman spinning in our room. I just don't know what to do. I'm not bothered too much by strange sights and sounds, but when it starts getting slightly physical is when I start to become worried. I've dealt with hauntings most of my life, and a lot of strange occurrences I try to debunk, but I don't have an explanation for these ones. So this happened while I worked at a daycare. I was a full-time 3-year-old teacher. I had 7 kids in the class. They were touch and go with listening and following my directions, but I'm so grateful that on this day they listened. So each room had outside time. There was the blue room, which had 2 teachers. The red room, the room I worked in, had 3. The yellow room had 2 teachers, and the green room had 2. When each room went outside, they had another teacher to help with the kids, but I didn't. I was always on my own with my 7 kids. Being outside alone on the playground with 7 stir-crazy 3-year-olds never made me nervous or uneasy, but today, the church that was connected to the daycare was having a garage sale, so the parking lot was full of cars. The playground is about 150 yards away from the church and daycare entrance. The daycare had no way to see the playground since it was behind the building. So we had walkie-talkies, and as you may have guessed, the walkie-talkies didn't always reach the building so clear. Anyway, while we were out playing, a car had entered. I thought nothing of it, but it drove by the playground, which was fenced in and locked. I had keys, and backed around the lot of cars to the entrance. Without stopping, they drove back around to the playground and slowed, passing by us. I thought it was possibly a parent, but they know to clock their child out at the front desk. They drove around again, and this time stopped completely in front of the playground. The windows were tinted, so I couldn't see who it was. The kids were oblivious to this, and I started to become uncomfortable. They drove around again, and as they were driving around, I radioed to the office. "Hey, Ashley, there's a maroon SUV driving around the parking lot. They've driven in circles at least 4 times and keep stopping in front of the playground." I waited a while and got back static. By this time, they had driven back around, and a passenger got out and just stood by the SUV. I quickly yelled, "Friends, let's come over here," and ushered them to the furthest corner of the playground. I frantically radioed again, still static. The kids were asking questions. Finally, the driver got out and yelled, "How many kids you got over there? Need any help playing with them?" The driver was dressed in dirty jeans and a torn shirt. The passenger, dressed the same way, stepped closer to the fence. The kids were asking who they were. I told them to stay put. With all my strength, I walked over to them. They smiled slyly, and the driver said, "Well, you're a pretty tall drink of water. There's room for you and the kids in the back of the car." My stomach dropped, and my mouth dried up. Somehow, in the sternest voice I could manage, I looked the driver straight in the eyes and said, "If you touch my kids, I'll kill you." They laughed, but I kept their gaze and said, "Try it." I slowly raised the radio to my mouth. Holding their gaze, I said, Call 911 right now. To their and my surprise, the director came back. We're dialing them. What's happening? Before I could reply back, they ran to their car and peeled out, but not before I got their make, model, and plate number. Immediately after I saw them leave the parking lot, I yelled at my kids to run with me to the entrance. As soon as we had walked through the doors, the director and some staff were waiting for us. I burst into tears and hugged my kids close to me. The cops came and I gave them a statement, but never heard anything from them. I've since then left the daycare, but I will always be grateful that the kids put their listening ears on that day. I moved in with my girlfriend 2 years ago. She is a widower. I am divorced. Her husband passed due to a self-induced insulin coma. Since we dated and after I moved in, she had told me that she hears her name being called when in the bedroom closet. I have seen a shadowy figure walk across the living room. I asked if it was her, since I was at the kitchen table and she was doing crunches in the living room. I couldn't see her until she stood up and said she hadn't walked across the room. The worst thing that happened so far was early on a Saturday morning. I had set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. Just before the alarm went off, I woke up suddenly and my girlfriend was not in bed and the shower was running. As soon as I realized where she was, the bathroom mirror hit the floor. That mirror was framed like a picture and hung on a wire like a picture. I ran into the bathroom and she was looking out of the shower. She was clearly not fully awake and looked very confused. She said a voice told her to get in the shower and she doesn't remember anything until the mirror crashed. The mirror didn't land face down or disturb the bottles on the counter. The way the hook tore out of the wall was up, like it had been grabbed and yanked. The mirror was laying glass side up, halfway between the sink basin and the shower. There was either a real or imagined presence in the bathroom and closet area of the house. Since she works from home, she is reported hearing things and sometimes seeing a figure at different places around the house. This happened to me the first time about 4 years ago and has since happened 2 other times. I think about it often, so I decided maybe by talking about it here I can let it out of my mind. Near where I live in California, there's a woodsy road that runs parallel to the freeway, and it's normally less crowded, so it's been my choice of road for this direction for years. One night I was leaving work pretty late and took that road home like I normally do every day. This was the latest I'd ever been on this road, around 1 a.m. I was driving like normal with all the windows down on this warm summer night with my music up pretty loud, just decompressing from the day. Towards the end of the road, there's a memorial for a couple who had died on that road, and it's been years, so I'm used to seeing it. This night, I passed it like any other time, but this time, everything got slow. Like it wasn't in real time anymore. I don't even remember hearing my music anymore, even though the volume hadn't changed. I focused on the road in front of me and I could see a cloudy mist, like low fog, and as I drove through it, I felt like electricity was going through all my body, like my teeth had electrical currents going through them. As soon as I passed through it, everything went back into real time again, and I felt a wave of horrible sadness and fear come over me, like my own emotions weren't my own. This whole experience lasted probably 2 minutes, but it felt like 20. I kept driving. I wanted to pull over and collect myself, but I also wanted to get off that road. As soon as the road had ended onto the main boulevard, I felt so much better, but incredibly creeped out by what had just happened. I stopped taking that road until about a year later. I had forgotten the whole thing by this time and ended up on that road again with my mom after leaving a late dinner. And it happened again. This time she felt it too. I felt it again. The memories of my experience flashed back to me as soon as I had saw that low fog again up ahead. That horrible, sad, and electrical feeling surged through my body again. My mom said she felt the same thing. My feeling is that the couple who died on that road are not at rest and seem to stay near their crash site, or maybe it's residual energy from the impact of the crash. I've been wanting to go back to that area now that it's summertime again. It's only ever happened while during summer, but I'm afraid to since it's a full-body experience that makes me really tired afterwards. Has anyone else ever had an experience like this? I got on the bus as I did every day to go to work that morning. I was smiling because I had just read something funny before the bus had arrived, and I was thinking about it. Beware of consuming Terry Pratchett books in public. As I looked for an empty seat, I accidentally broke the cardinal rule of British public transportation and met the eye of a fellow passenger. He was an older, sweet-looking, grandfatherly Asian man, probably in his mid-50s. He brightened up and smiled at me, and I realized, oh crap, now he thinks I'm smiling at him. Oh well. And nodded to him as I made my way to a seat a few rows behind him. Just a random, polite, inconsequential exchange, right? The next day he was on the bus again when I caught it, and patted the empty spot next to him when I got on. I shook my head and went to another empty seat, and after the bus was moving, he got up, and to my horror came and sat next to me. After a few minutes, he leaned in and whispered, "You smile so beautiful, like an angel. You should be with the angels." And then he patted my knee kindly. Every day he was on the bus. I tried varying times as much as I could, considering I was going to work, but he was always there. I would just stand by the front, even if there were seats. And the first note was pushed in my letterbox. "You were watching television with your mother. You're a good daughter. I am right, like an angel." I found footprints in the flower bed under the living room window. From then on, we drew the curtains. The notes kept coming over a period of about 3 months and gradually got worse. "An angel should fly to heaven. You're too good for us. I will make wings for you. You will smile down on me forever." I went to the police and they told me that yes, it all sounded pretty bad. But there was nothing they could do because he'd done nothing physically violent to me. "When he attacks you," they said, "call us." A week later, I opened the door to go to work, and there was a dead white dove on its back with its wings spread on my front doorstep. And another note: "I will give you friends for heaven first. An angel will need messengers." I looked down at the poor dead bird and realized then this wasn't going to stop, and no one would help me. I took the next day off of work, somehow found a new place to move into the next day, and hired a moving truck. I think fear overpowered me that whole night. I drew the curtains, and despite my mother's protests, she was in end-stage cancer, and I cared for her. She lived with me as a result. Somehow, I packed the entire house up, including my mom and her cat. I didn't sleep, and honestly don't entirely remember that night. But by 9 a.m. when the truck rolled up, everything was ready to get carried out. I had the truck drive us almost 100 miles out of the city, and then take a scenic route back to the other side of town. We were in our new place that night. That night, I sat on the stairs and watched the letterbox. I fell asleep there, and when I woke up in the morning, I cried. There was no note on the mat. I caught the bus into work, and to the horror of all the other passengers, I ugly cried. He wasn't there. I never saw him again, but I was on edge till I eventually moved out of the country a few years later, and I haven't gotten on a bus since. About 2 years ago, when I was a freshman in college, I decided to go out on a date with a guy I had met in my engineering class. He was about 6.5 feet tall and used to play football. His presence, accompanied by the fact that I was always used to living in a very safe neighborhood growing up, made me confident enough to go out late at night. We went to Olive Garden that night and had a great time. When we finished dinner, it was about midnight, and we had to take public transportation to get to the parking lot his car was parked at. He commuted to school and would get his car in the evening. The area wasn't too bad, so I never really expected what came next. While on the train, we noticed that there were very few people, not surprising considering the hour. There was a questionable male sitting in the back of the last car, and a few casual others situated more throughout the front one, maybe 6 of us in the train in total. Paying no mind to the man in the background, James and I elected to sit in the front of the back car. Everything was perfectly fine until the strange man decided to approach us. Thankfully, I ended up on the window side while James took the aisle, but I will never forget what I saw. As someone who was blessed with financial prosperity my whole life, I'd never really seen up close what poverty and poor choices could do to someone. The strange man had layers upon layers of jackets and pants that sagged uncomfortably low. His face looked horrible. He had dark circles and gaunt features that made him look emaciated. His eyes were incredibly bloodshot and looked as if though they'd pop out of his skull at any moment. Then there were his teeth, rotten and occasionally missing. I quickly turned away, not wanting to engage. He never said anything to us, thankfully, but he did march down the aisle and stop at the row of seats James and I were sitting at, only to rummage around in his pants. I'm not really sure what he was doing, and I don't think I want to know. Anyways, the man then returned to his seat in the back, seemingly uninterested at that point. My date and I were beginning to feel pretty uncomfortable, so we got up and decided to move to the front of the car where the more normal people seemed to be. Apparently that wasn't okay because the man immediately noticed us and followed us to the front. At this point, I was squeezing James's arm, silently warning him of what was happening. There wasn't much either of us could do though, so we just sat there with the other passengers and waited for our stop, which was at the end of the line. When the doors opened, James and I considered getting up, but all of us were frozen. This strange man refused to get off the train despite standing closer to the doors. Instead of leaving, he turned to all of us abruptly and came close to each of us, staring us dead in the eye with an intensity that I can only describe as demonic. Minutes passed. It was as if he was looking for a sign of fear in each of us. When none of us budged and kept our cool, he finally exited the train. Everyone let out a sigh of relief and hopped off. The man was nowhere in sight. What an odd guy, I thought. Thinking that everything was fine, James and I headed to his car, which happened to be at the back of the lot. We jogged because we didn't want to be out with that creep any longer than necessary, and that proved to be wise when the dude came out of nowhere moments later and decided to give chase. James and I then sprinted as fast as we could across the dark parking lot, and that would have been fine if I hadn't, you guessed it, tripped. To get to James's car in the most direct way possible, James and I had to hop over the cement areas with plants that separate the sections of a lot. As a tall guy with a huge stride, he had no problem. As just over a 5-foot person in flip-flops, I managed. But I didn't expect there to be a stone block, those ones that stop you from driving too far forward as well. My right foot landed on the stone block. I felt a sharp pain and fell to the ground, rolling a few times across the uneven, scratchy pavement. Fairly disoriented, I wobbled to my feet and called out to James, who was still sprinting on ahead. Realizing I had fallen behind and was injured, he rushed back and helped me jog to the car. And while all this was happening, the crazy guy was snapping at our heels. We somehow got to his car in time and locked the doors, and I'm glad we did, because that deterred him enough to give up the chase. When I examined my injuries, it seemed that I'd sprained my ankle and ripped off multiple chunks of flesh from both knees. My lower legs were covered in blood, and I thought I was about to go to the hospital, but I figured it wasn't life-threatening enough to do so. Eric had just retired, so my health coverages was all over the place. James drove me back to campus and helped me hobble to my dorm, where I went to the shower to address my wounds. Campus health center wasn't open that late. I then took a couple of pills of Tylenol, since I'm allergic to ibuprofen, and proceeded to pick bits of rock and glass out of my knee with the manicure scissors and tweezers I had available. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep that night. In the morning, I went to the health center and got properly treated. I was in a wheelchair for quite a while after that and continued to bleed through my bandages even weeks later. Who knows what the motivation was, and thankfully I never saw him again, because that creepy guy on the train was clearly out of his mind. I've had a lot of strange jobs, but one of the most interesting was working for a tax company based out of Texas. I lived in Kentucky, my home state at the time, but because this company contracted out jobs remotely, I was able to make a very good living for performing tasks which were generally very simple. I had a work partner, but not all the time, and our duty was to travel all over the eastern and central part of the state to county courthouse PVA offices. You might not have those, it's a small town thing, and research delinquent property taxes. We were then required to compile a list of properties who had delinquent taxes and submit it to our boss. She was our primary contact in Texas. This part is important because it was the only reason we would sometimes have to deal with hostile people, and the company would then buy the taxes if the property tickled their fancy, and a letter was issued to the owner of the property stating that at a certain amount of time to repay the amount. I'm not sure what would happen after that, since that part wasn't my job, but I do know that people immediately assumed, because of lack of knowledge or understanding the laws, this company was going to take their property and throw them out into the streets. Before the company brought the taxes, however, they would send us back a list of the ones they were interested in, and we would then go out to the locations, photograph the property, and then submit all the photos to our Texas contact. This is where things got interesting. It was like the property owners had some kind of psychic intuition about us. They had no idea who we were or when we were coming, since we worked almost on our own schedule. They didn't know what kind of color of car we would be in, yet somehow they would frequently burst out their front doors as we pulled up to shoot photos of the location. This made for some interesting and often frightening confrontations. After getting comfortable with the job, I even came up with a convincing story to tell angry property owners when they chased us down with their car. We're from the County Property Valuation Administration. We're just updating our property files and needed a current photo. This would de-escalate the situation, and they apologized for threatening our lives and sometimes running us off the road to make us pull over. I have a lot of stories from this job, but here's the best one. We were deep in the hills of eastern Kentucky one day, searching desperately for a single-wide trailer from our list. We found a hauler matching our directions. This is way before the GPS days. We had to use real county maps, believe it or not, and took a chance. As we drove up the hauler, houses began to spread out farther and farther, and soon we were totally isolated. Nothing but trees and a narrow gravel road. Suddenly, we spotted the trailer. It didn't look like anything it did in the PVA picture. Time had taken a real toll on this place. Some of you might not understand this depending on where you're from, but around my home state, one grows very accustomed to the look and feel of a potential location for drug manufacturing. I know, it might not make sense, but trust me, we knew immediately that this place was a prime location for a meth lab. We did spot the trailer until we had driven a little ways past it, so we didn't get a great photo on the way in. As usual, we decided to drive on by, turn around, and get the shot on the way back. Apparently, someone saw us on the way in. This was a very rural road, and not even a road at this point since it had turned to gravel a mile or two back. I basically had to turn the car by pulling onto an embankment and doing what felt like a 32-point turn to keep from going off into a ditch. While I was turning, my buddy said, "Hey, look." I looked, and 3 people were walking out of the woods into the road. Just people, no big deal. I had the car straightened out in the road at this point and noticed they had weapons. A young, nasty-looking fellow was holding a baseball bat, of all things. A nasty-looking older fellow had a shovel. Both were shirtless, and then there was a screaming girl. Something clicked in my head. On the drive-in, when the partner snapped the photo, I heard a girl scream. It was an angry scream, but I couldn't make out what was said. I didn't even know where it came from, and I certainly didn't think the scream was directed at us. Apparently it was. These people were now walking with intention toward my stopped car. I kept thinking, is this really happening? And what exactly is happening? My partner was freaking out a little and convinced they were going to attack us. It's hard to explain what was going through my head at this point because I couldn't really believe what I was seeing. The only thing I could think was, hit him with the car, just like on Grand Theft Auto. Otherwise, you're gonna die. They were screaming, shaking their weapons, and closing in, and I was running out of time. I revved the tiny engine in my red Pontiac Grand Prix, hoping to scare them, and then I left off the gas. I plowed toward them with the fury of all 6 cylinders, or 4, however many there were, I don't remember. They jumped out of the way last minute as I grazed by them, throwing gravel and dirt. Once we were at a safe distance, I slowed down and looked back. Luckily, they were gone. Unluckily, we were once again too far from the trailer to get a good photo. I explained this to my boss when I emailed her Day's collection of property photos, and she seemed to understand. After that, I kept a loaded .45 in my glove box, and I felt significantly more confident while doing my job. I quit a couple of years later, though. It was just too dangerous, even if I was packing heat. So, to the hillbilly meth-making counterparts of Otis Baby and Captain Spaulding, I hope I never see you again. This happened last year during October. To give a bit of context, this story implicates myself and my two best friends, Andrew and Marion. All three of us are males, 18 years of age. All three of us are classmates. Now, at the start of the week, Andrew kept bothering me and Marion about going to a certain party outside of our city, in the town where he lives. Andrew said some guy was throwing a party and that he had bought a lot of food and alcohol and other experimental things, and there would be no need for us to bring anything. It sounded great. Both me and Marion asked who the dude was, and Andrew said it was someone he knew and the situation seemed fine. Next issue would be transportation to said town, but Andrew also assured us that the guy would come pick us up in his car and then deliver us back the next day. Friday rolls around, the day we were supposed to leave, and both me and Marion had partied hard the night before, having slept something like 3 hours. The dude who came to pick us up was apparently a religion teacher in the town Andrew grew up in, about whom he had told us a lot of shady stuff. The dude seemed to be in his mid-30s, but was apparently older, which will make sense later. What we knew about him was that he usually did crazy stuff with a lot of young people, like parties and alcohol and stuff, but it just seemed like this guy was trying to relive his youth, so we went along with it. After we all were in his car, he said that if we guessed his age, he'd buy us even more stuff. After a couple more guesses, me and Marion failed to find out his age. Andrew, even though he knew, did not want to tell us. It seemed like a fun game. Then the dude drove us to some place to apparently buy even more stuff. Okay, weird, but not out of place. We ended up on the road. The trip was supposed to be like a couple of hours drive away from the city, but this guy was insane. He sped all the way to there, overtook people on the right, drove on the left lane just so he could scream while seeing the other cars coming.
I don't know if, in general, as a society, we're getting grosser or if the internet's just bringing it to the surface, but I just think in general there's a movement towards perversion that feels new to me. The first thing that made me think this was a couple months ago, I went on a date with a guy, then we went on a second date. On the second date, he asked me if I could squirt. Let's talk about it. Look, first of all, I do not squirt. Just so you know, I am not a squirter, I am not squirting. I am not a squirting lady. I don't know if I'm just dehydrated, if I need more Gatorade in my life. I'm not squirting, okay? I mean, if you want, I will compromise and I will pee on you. I'd rather not, but if that's your thing, I'm sure I could fashion some pee.